Hello Internet and welcome to Commander 1-on-1. In this episode I'll be rambling about a quite broad topic, resource advantage. But first, a little twist in the video format. Usually I leave the admin stuff to the end. However, my list of MTG topics that I wanted to cover for my local playgroup in this series approaches its end. So it's time to do the early YouTube call to action and ask the viewers to get me some ideas in the comments for additional episodes. Also to like and subscribe. You can consider yourself engaged now. Congratulations. With that out of the way, we can move to the actual meat and potatoes of the video. Understanding the concept of resource advantage in Magic the Gathering. It's quite safe to assume that most MTG players that consume content on YouTube are at least familiar with the terms 1-for-1 or 2-for-1 in the context of the game. But to be sure, I quickly expand this for those who aren't. Those terms apply to trades in most easy to comprehend resource in the game, cards. If an opponent plays a creature and you use a removal spell on it, it's a 1-for-1 trade. One of their cards for one of yours. This is called resource parity. Both sides lost the equal amounts of their resources and no one has the advantage. Now let's take a look at a similar example with some additional actions. An opponent plays a creature. Then they want to enchant it with an aura. If we cast our removal in response to the aura cast, we can remove the creature and also fizzle the aura spell itself, sending it straight to the graveyard. This is 2-for-1, a basic form of resource advantage. You spend less resource than your opponent and gain an advantage this way. A pretty straightforward concept. However, the resource advantage is a little more complicated in Commander. In a 4-player game, you have 3 opponents, after all. So even a 2-for-1 trade against one of them is not exactly an advantage for you. 2 other players gained the most from the situation, since they didn't expend any of their own resources. To get resource advantage in this situation, we need to think in a slightly different way. And I'll try to show you at least some examples for that. We should start with simple overview of possible resources. To keep it simple, I'll break everything into 3 categories. 1. Card advantage. Plain and simple. If you draw more cards per turn than your opponents, you have a card advantage. 2. Mana advantage. This is a little more nuanced. The basic case is having more mana than your opponents. But you can also get mana advantage if you have an effect that allows you to cast your spells for less mana than they should. Or effect that forces your opponent to pay more mana for their spells. 3. Game state advantage. I'll admit, this one is kind of catch-all for remaining options. But going full granular and having 7 or so categories felt stupid. So let's just bundle all token generation, life gain, incremental advantage from planeswalkers, etc. here and call it a day. Okay, now that we have this out of the way, let's keep you on your toes and start from number 2. Mana advantage. Why, you ask? It's simple. You can use your mana advantage as a form of resource to gain advantage in other 2 categories. There's quite a lot of options to gain mana advantage. All of them have their pros and cons, and should be used in a specific circumstances. So, our first mana advantage use case has a form of mana dorks. Those creatures represent mana acceleration with upfront cost. Usually they need at least a few turns to be mana positive. That is, to generate more mana than what's used to cast them. Let's take Elvish Mystic for example. We need to cast him for 1 green mana. He's a creature, so we can use his ability on our next turn, unless we give him haste in some way. That means we invested 1 mana for no benefit right now. If the elf lives to the next turn, we can use its ability and gain additional green mana. That means that Elvish Mystic is now a mana neutral investment. But we gained an ability to spend more mana in this turn. Even if we don't play land, we have 2 mana available, rather than only 1 from the land we used to play our Dork last turn. This situation is called tempo gain. and can be simplified to ability to play cards ahead of their curve. In our simple example, a spell that costs 3 mana on turn 2. Now, if a mana dork survives more than one turn, it can start to provide an actual mana advantage. On turn 3, our Elvish Mystic would generate 2 mana total, and we spend only 1 mana to cast him. That puts us clearly in the green zone in terms of resources. The most obvious drawback of mana dorks is the fact that they are creatures, which means they are easiest to remove from of permanent types. Of course, they have other uses, but we'll get to those later. For now, let's move to ramp spells. Those are more complicated than it would seem at first glance. So let's break it down. In terms of card advantage, they are at least neutral. For one spell, we get at least one specific card from our deck, ideally straight to the battlefield. As we learned from the mana dork example, this gets us some tempo, allowing us to jump ahead in the normal land progression in the game. Now let's talk about actual mana advantage. Most ramp spells pay for themselves over the course of at least 2 turns. For basic example, we have Rampant Growth. On turn 2 we pay 2 mana to get a tapped basic to the battlefield. That gives us 1 additional mana each turn for the rest of the game. So on turn 4 we are mana neutral, and from turn 5 forward we have mana advantage. This means that usually ramp spells are slower than mana dorks, but their effects are usually much harder to deal with. They also have much better scaling. Let's take a look at Open the Way. For 3 mana we get 1 additional land into play. That means if we cast this on turn 3, we get some mana advantage on turn 7, which seems bad. But if we spend 4 mana to get 2 lands, we also have advantage on turn 7. It's not only 1 turn faster, but we also have 1 more mana in our total calculations, not to mention having additional land on the battlefield. If we cast this with x equals 3 for 5 mana total, we attain positive balance in 2 turns, and traded 1 spell for 3 permanents on the battlefield. I think it's clear how this can snowball into some bullshit. Moving on to the next type of mana advantage, mana rocks. Everyone knows that Sol Ring is busted, but not everyone understands why Sol Ring is busted. Mana rocks have 2 distinct advantages over mana dorks. In most cases you can use them on the same turn you play them, and are harder to remove from the board. That means they give you mana advantage faster, in extreme cases like Sol Ring or Moxen, even immediately. This leads to bigger tempo swings, and when used properly can snowball the game into one-sided stomping. As you can imagine, the most noticeable drawback of mana rocks is their lack of versatility. In normal circumstances you cannot use them to attack other players or defend yourself from attacks. They provide additional mana quickly, and that's the point of them. This may be a hot take, but not all decks should run mana rocks. In some cases they are not essential to your game plan. I personally have a deck that does not have a Sol Ring or Arcane Signet in the decklist. The main reason was that drawing those cards at any point of the game other than opening hand was a very feels bad moment. I think that anyone who top decked a Sol Ring on turn 7 can relate to that. We'll finish our mana advantage section with rituals. This type of spell provides an instant mana advantage at the cost of the card. As you can imagine, this translates into bigger tempo swings, but has no long-term sustainability. You want your rituals in a deck that needs a lot of mana right now, to do some ungodly bullshit. That usually wins the game if not dealt with. To get you some quick examples, a turn 1 Dark Ritual into Necropotence and drawing 10 plus cards. Or a turn 4 Sitting Song into Ironcrag Feat into Dragonstorm. For 3 dragons that can probably win the game right now. As a rule of thumb, you can assume that player casting a ritual spell is trying to do something dumb. And you should be awake a little bit more, since the game can end at any moment now. Okay, this will be all for the mana advantage section. We started here since mana by itself does not win games. Having an advantage here enables you to do more stuff faster, but if someone stops the stuff you want to do faster, there's no much left to do with all that mana. So let's fix that and talk about ways to get card advantage. At the basic level, it's a simple get out more than you put in. So divination is a clear card advantage. We use one card to get 2 cards. The problem lies in resource disparity in Commander. For each card you draw, your opponents as a group will draw 3 cards. So this kind of simple +1 is not as effective as in 1v1 matches. We need ways to give those cards turn after turn. One of the options is to deploy some kind of draw engine, like Phyrexian Arena or Black Market Connections. Those will get us cards each turn they are not dealt with. We can treat things like Insight Engine or the One Ring in the similar way. They require more mana investment, but their effect scales turn after turn. I think I also count the effects like the Royalty Chip or Vizier of the Menagerie in this category. While not drawing your cards exactly, they allow you the access to the top of your library. In some cases you could cast 3 or 4 spells this way without drawing them first. Okay, time to tell you about the main reason that moved mana advantage to the first place in the discussion. Mana sinks. And by that I mean other permanents that allow us to draw a card when we dump some mana into them. Staff of Domination is one of the more famous ones. It has quite a lot of utility besides drawing us cards. For example, going infinite with any creature that can produce at least 5 mana when tapped. But that's a different story. For now, let's go back to changing mana into cards. As far as colors go, drawing extra cards is mostly in the domain of blue. And here we have not only Triska Decaphile and Kefnet the Mindful, but also a classic in the form of Azure Mage. If we add more colors, we can focus on cards like Gretchen Titchwillow, Thrasia's Triton Hero, or even Marno's Kalgar for maximum amount of bullshit. All of those are permanents, but we also have one-time mana sinks in terms of spells, the most famous being Blue Sun Zenith. I could probably go on about this a lot more, but this script grows to worrying size way too quickly, so time to move to the next form. Accidental card draw. This category of advantage is usually triggered when something specific happens, like casting or copying an instant or sorcery spell when Archmage Emeritus is around, or casting a creature spell with Beast Whisperer on the battlefield. Joyra, Weatherlight Captain does this with historic spells, and so on. You can probably find an effect like this for almost all commander decks. In some cases it can even be your commander. If you want to put a little more work, there's a bunch of effects that draw cards when dealing damage to a player. Assembling some kind of engine with Curiosity and Guttersnipe works wonders in Spellslinger decks. Edric, Spymaster of Trest, or Toski, Bearer of Secrets go wild with a white board of creatures. So does Gix, Yagmoth's Praetor, but he's kinda spicy with that. No king shaming though. I think that's a good cutoff point for card advantage topic. We have the third category left after all. Game state advantage sounds very high level, but on the base level is just everything else that progresses our game plan without going directly into mana or card advantage category. Like getting an elemental token from Young Pyromancer when we cast an instant or sorcery spell, or a monk token from Monastery Mentor. In this category we can also put all the small effects that give us clue or food tokens, or waste that allows us to double the value from other sources. Think Harmonic Prodigy or Panharmonicon. I think I would also put Teleportation Circle here for the same reason. Most loyalty abilities from Planeswalker would also land here. +1 from Elizabeth's Sun Champion, +2 from Ugin the Spirit Dragon, or even -1 from Vivian on the Hand. As long as it's something that advances your board state, we can probably squeeze that here. I know this specific section is a little bit messy. Unfortunately, Magic is a very complex game and delving into specific would be, well, an overkill. I think this video is long enough already. And if the analytics are correct, most of the viewers are already gone or asleep. So I'll just shut up for today. See ya in the next one.